Hello. Hello, everyone.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Okay, can I start checking the attendance now? Can I start checking the attendance, class?
Yes.
Okay. I will start from section Santol. Say present. Please listen, huh? Section Santol. Say present once your name is called. Joshua Abusejo, Joshua Daniel, John Joseph, Anyosa, John Edward, Are, Mark Kenneth, Catalo Earl.
Present.
Okay, very good. Delantar, Labro.
Present.
Okay. Lilia. Rosalejos.
Present.
Samson Raydel.
Present.
Monroy. Wait lang ha, may ko lagi bibilin. Monroy. Ito ni Monroy. Monroy Angel is yeah. Monroy Angel is from what section?
Mango po.
Okay, thank you. 1 minute na. Yung kanta na. Delantar Labro, Andre, Renz, Rodolph, so Renz, Rosalejo, Samson Raydel,
Present.
Traboco, John Ray,
Ma'am,
Trabaho.
present.
Okay. Girls, please listen. Abelia Princess. Adamas Kera. Adamas. Alaya Francine. Alaya. Alaya Francine. Amos.
Present.
Apura Denise. Apura. Banario Josel. Banario. Beato. Beato. Andrea. Cepeda. Miska. Kiana Cecista.
Present po.
Jazzy Doldolaya. Jazzy. Marian Dulfo.
Present po.
Marian. Cristile. Cristile Factor. Cristile. Denisa Fertes. Denisa. Hyacinth Galupe.
Present.
Tricia Nicole. Tricia Gapud. Tricia Nicole. Gura. Diana. Garcia.
Present.
Garcia. Angel Garcia. Gura is present. Hazel Hilaria. Hazel. Habuli Shira.
Present po.
Latoha Charnet.
Present.
Latoha. Mendoza Jessel. Mendoza. Montes Jahara. Padilla Jessel. Padilla.
Present. Present po.
Pagayanan. Pagayanan Isaiah. Pagayanan Isaiah. Pan Alison.
Present po.
Yeza Uno. Ramirez Ninia. Ramirez. Rejang Cherise. Cherise Rejang. Grace Love. Grace Love Turla.
Present.
Grace. Okay, very good. Turla is present. Diba? Sabido Grace Love. Are you there? Grace Love. Okay, so we go to section Mango. Please listen. Apita Zion.
Present.
Apita.
Okay na.
Okay. Very
Present.
good. Yes. Mark Vince.
Present.
Chad Banaldia.
Present.
Antiles John David. Bihar Justin.
Present.
Strobo Lance. Strobo. Go Dick. Go.
Present.
Cardio Ernst.
Present.
Malinaw the fourth. Marasigan Christian.
Present.
Marasigan. Nicart Alexi.
Present.
Ogala Jade.
Present.
Panis Carl. Seso Yeshel. Seso. Sulayaw San.
Present.
Sulayaw. Okay, very good, very good. Uy, Mary Vincent. Uy.
Present po. Present.
Okay, very good. We go to the girls. Aberia Erica. Aberia.
Present po.
Abobo Lorraine. Lorraine. Afable Zoe.
Present.
Afable.
Present.
Alde Gail. Gail
Present
Alde.
po. Present po.
Okay. Ambil Ana.
Present.
Ambil. Amoyo Raven. Raven
Present.
Amoyo. Joyce Ampong. Joyce. Apura Julia. Apura. Astakaan. Okay. Astakaan Nash. Nash. Colima Angeline.
Present.
Colima. Okay, very good. Nakasulod naghip. Dator John Antoinette. Dator.
Present.
De Los Santos. Krishna. De Los
Present po,
Santos.
Present, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Jocelyn. Jolola.
Present po.
Docena. Aliana. Docena.
Present.
Gapate, Jillian.
Present po.
Gapate. Guevara, Julia.
Present po.
Labado, Antoinette.
Present.
Marasigan, Maksyan. Marasigan.
po.
Benzon, Debbie.
Present
Menzon.
po. Present.
Peralta, Isabella.
Present, ma'am.
Promeda, Francesca.
Present.
Promeda. Puno, Jaslyn. Puno. Sakmar, Riz.
Present
Sakmar.
Present po.
Suwal, Angelique. Suwal. Monroy, Angel. Monroy. Okay. So we'll continue with the discussion on how ATP is produced. Before we go to the lesson proper, actually we'll be discussing today Krebs cycle and electron transport chain, which is just a continuation of what we discussed last time, which is glycolysis. Okay, so may I request Antoinette Lavado to give us a review, a short review of the discussion last time.
Yes,
Antoinette? Okay.
good afternoon, everyone. Last meeting, we discussed about ATP production. What is ATP? A stands for adenosine, T stands for tri, P stands for phosphate, adenosine triphosphate. It is the main product of cellular respiration, energy currency of cells, and source of energy of cells. There are two ways by which ATP is produced, aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. In aerobic respiration, it requires oxygen, produces more ATPs, and possible in eukaryotes. In anaerobic respiration, it does not require oxygen, produce less ATPs, and possible in prokaryotes. So why is ATP important? ATP is important because it provides the energy needed for many essential processes in organisms and cells. That's all.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so it was a comprehensive review of the discussion last time. Okay, so as what I've said last time, cellular respiration, since it is a process, definitely it involves certain stages. Actually, cellular respiration involves three major stages. One is glycolysis, the other is Krebs cycle, and the last one is electron transport chain. We're done with the first stage, which is glycolysis. Now, in cellular respiration, actually, there are two types. One needs oxygen to produce or to manufacture adenosine triphosphate. And the other one is anaerobic respiration, which does not require or does not need oxygen. Okay, so since oxygen is not needed in the process in glycolysis, less ATP molecules are made, while in aerobic respiration, because of the presence of oxygen, many ATP molecules are made. And that is the focus of today's discussion, aerobic respiration. Okay. Okay. So for today's objectives, or for today's lesson rather, we will be guided again by these objectives to discuss each step in ATP production, to list down the number of ATP produced in every stage of ATP production, and know the significance of ATP in a living cell. Actually, Antoinette was able to give us an overall. She was able to give us what's this? The importance or the significance of ATP in living organisms. So how important is ATP? Actually, it is still a part of today's discussion. Anyway, thank you for that. Okay, so last time, these questions were posted before we discussed glycolysis, and we will again read it. I know some of you can be able to answer these commonly asked questions. So what is ATP again? What is ATP, class? So for those on our website, you can. Okay, very good. Okay, thank you for that. So ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. So 3 phosphates are joined or attached or connected to the adenosine molecule. Okay, so the reason why it is T for tri, meaning 3 phosphates are connected or are attached to the adenosine molecule. So how does the body produce ATP? Anybody? How does the body produce ATP?
Through cellular respiration.
Very good. Through cellular respiration, which involves, as what I said just a while ago, which involves 3 major stages. So one is glycolysis, which is anaerobic, and the other 2, Krebs cycle and electron transport chain, which are both aerobic respiration. Okay. For the next two questions, I think you will be able to answer this after we tackle or after we discuss the lesson. Okay. Now, as what I've said, full screen. Make this full screen. Wait lang. Full screen. Okay. So last time again, we discussed glycolysis. Glycolysis is actually, please take note of this. Glycolysis is the first step of cellular respiration. First step of cellular respiration. Since cellular respiration has 2 types, aerobic and anaerobic. Now, in anaerobic respiration, glycolysis is the first step. It is the first step in anaerobic respiration. And fermentation follows after it. Now, if the cell has no oxygen yet, then glycolysis will proceed to fermentation. But if oxygen is already available in the cell, then glycolysis will proceed to Krebs cycle. Again, Krebs cycle will only follow after glycolysis if there is oxygen available inside the cell. Okay, so it now becomes aerobic respiration because of the presence of oxygen. Now, aerobic na tayo. So last time we discussed anaerobic respiration. Now today's discussion will focus on aerobic respiration. Now, anong pagkakaiba again between aerobic and anaerobic respiration, class?
Aerobic requires energy. Anaerobic has anaerobic.
Okay, so the big difference is the presence of oxygen. So if there is oxygen again in respiration, then it becomes aerobic. If there is no oxygen available, then respiration becomes anaerobic. anaerobic. Though oxygen is not available, the process can still produce ATP. It still can produce adenosine triphosphate, where cells get energy. So it still can produce adenosine triphosphate, only that the ATP produced is only few as compared to the number of ATPs produced during aerobic respiration. Okay, now before we go to Krebs cycle, before we go to aerobic respiration, where does glycolysis occur? Again, parang review na to. So where does glycolysis take place?
Occur in the
Cytoplasm.
outside the
Very
mitochondria
good.
of the cell.
In the cytosol outside the mitochondria. So it occurs in the cytoplasm outside the mitochondria. If oxygen is already available inside cells, so if oxygen is already available in the mitochondrion, then glycolysis, which is anaerobic, will then proceed to aerobic respiration. Okay, so we'll now proceed to the Krebs cycle. Like glycolysis, Krebs cycle also follows certain steps. Krebs. Any idea what Krebs cycle is?
Citric acid cycle.
Okay. Okay, so Krebs cycle. Krebs, as the name implies, it was discovered by Hans Krebs. So the cycle, actually, the chemical reaction in the production of ATP was discovered by Hans Krebs. So the name was given to him, or the credit was given to him. Okay, so Krebs cycle. Before, it was called as the citric acid cycle. Citric acid cycle. Anyway, Krebs cycle occurs under aerobic conditions. It occurs when there is oxygen available. So aerobic condition. Krebs cycle in eukaryotes, it takes place in the matrix of mitochondria. Again, please take this down or take note of this. The Krebs cycle in eukaryotes takes place in the matrix of mitochondria. Matrix, ito yung matrix. Matrix is located inside the folded inner membranes. So dito siya. So the matrix. So this is where the Krebs cycle happens. While in prokaryotes, in bacteria, it takes place in the cytoplasm since it has no mitochondria in prokaryotic cells. Again, in eukaryotes, Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle takes place in the matrix of mitochondria, while in prokaryotes, it takes place in the cytoplasm. Okay, so on the opposite page, we have here the enlarged illustration of the mitochondrion where cellular respiration occurs. Okay, so we have it here, the outer membrane. So this is the inner membrane, which is folded, and the folded inner membrane is called as the cristae. Inside it is the matrix, and this is where Krebs cycle occurs. Now, in between the inner membrane and the outer membrane is the mitochondrial space. This is very important because I'll just give you an overview of this. Now, this is where electron transport chain occurs. Okay, so in between the outer and the inner membrane or the mitochondrial space. Okay, so now, who can give me an idea about pyruvate or pyruvic acid? I think we already have discussed this last time. So what is pyruvate and how is this made? How is this molecule made? Anybody? Bongbong, malinaw? What is pyruvate again? Pyruvate. What is pyruvate and how is this made inside the cell? Hala, sige. Ito, okay na. Okay na? Okay na sound? May I request you to all of you to open the microphone para makita ko kung ulit. Di pa nakaturog. Okay, thank you. So pyruvate, Bongbong, may I hear from you? May we hear from you? Dari lang ay ako. All of us. Okay, so pyruvate. So what can you say about the pyruvate or pyruvic acid? Pyruvate and pyruvic acid are the same. Again. Pyruvate is? Okay, so this is a product, one of the products in glycolysis. Pyruvic acid or pyruvate. So itong pyruvate actually comes from glyceraldehyde phosphate. Diba? When glucose breaks down, when one glucose molecule breaks down, or when the glucose molecule breaks down, it is able to produce two molecules of glyceraldehyde phosphate or G3P. Asya or GAP. Okay, asya na? Now, this glyceraldehyde phosphate will again undergo series of reactions to become pyruvate or pyruvic acid. In one molecule of glucose, how many GAP molecules are made? Or how many G3Ps are made? Two, very good. Now, both of these glyceraldehyde phosphate will undergo series of reactions to produce how many molecules of pyruvate? Pero itong mahihimo in one molecule of glucose. Pero nga pyruvate, it mahihimo.
So,
very good. Duha. Okay? Mag-annotate lang ako ha. Okay. Punta, glucose. Pag breakdown niya, it will make two GAPs, all glyceraldehyde phosphate. It will make two molecules of mas masayon pag type. It will make two molecules of. Okay, now each of these GAP will undergo series of reactions to become
Pyruvate.
Pyruvate, very good. So, up. Another. Okay, so in one molecule of glucose, it will be able to make 2 molecules of pyruvic acid or 2 molecules of pyruvate. Okay, nakuha. Now, these pyruvic acid molecules, when oxygen is already available, inside the cell, this pyruvic acid molecule, after glycolysis, will be converted into acetyl coenzyme A. It will be converted into acetyl coenzyme A in order to enter the Krebs cycle. Now you will notice that pyruvate or pyruvic acid is a 3. This is a 3 carbon molecule. 3 carbon molecule. Kasi nga galing siya sa gap. Gap is a 3 carbon molecule. 3 plus 3 equals 6. So there's 6 carbon molecules actually come from the glucose, being a 6 carbon compound or a 6 carbon molecule. Okay, now, acetyl coenzyme A is a 2 carbon molecule. 2 carbon molecule. Again, pyruvate will be converted into acetyl coenzyme A. Itpakiana, pyruvic acid is a 3 carbon compound. Makakonvert hiya into a 2 carbon compound called acetyl coenzyme A. Acetyl coenzyme A para hiya makasulod na Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle. Now, nahingain an usang carbon. Diba? Tikang hiya ha pyruvic acid. And pyruvic acid is a 3 carbon compound. So makakonvert hiya into acetyl coenzyme A, right? Acetyl coenzyme A is just a 2 carbon compound. So what happened to the other carbon class? Nahingain naman din hiya. Naggamit ang ano? Ano ang iya ginamitan?
Pag sa lagyan ng mitochondria yun, inagi mo din ang transport protein sa bangam.
Again. So, mahingain an usa nga carbon class. When the pyruvate will become acetyl coenzyme A, which is a 2 carbon compound, so what happened to the other carbon? Basta nala nawara. Basta nala hiya mawawara. So what will happen to it?
Transformed to a different
siguro marautit akon po iton akon signal kay parang nagpuputol-putol itong iyo tingog. Iton akon boses nga daha iyo, okay la?
Yes.
Opo, ma'am.
Okay. So it nga diha akon kay nagpuputol-putol. So what happened, Jade Ogale? So what do you think happened to the other carbon?
No po, ma'am. No po.
Pyruvate is a 3 carbon compound, right? Now, this pyruvate will undergo reactions for it to become an acetyl coenzyme A. Kaya lang, may problema tayo. Acetyl coenzyme A is only a 2 carbon compound. And pyruvate is a 3 carbon compound. So what happened to the other carbon? Ano na mo na lang yung duhong carbon compound. So what happened to the other carbon, Jade? Any volunteer? Yes, Gail.
It will be
Gail.
released. It will be released as carbon dioxide.
And the answer is correct. Okay, so the other carbon will become carbon dioxide. It will become carbon dioxide. Now, carbon dioxide is not needed in cellular respiration. So what happens is, it will go out of the mitochondrion. Kaya di man hiya gamit. It will go out of the mitochondrion in animals. Since we don't need carbon dioxide, we will release it when we exhale. In other words, kung na-exhale kita, di ba? That is carbon dioxide. Now, this carbon dioxide that we exhale actually comes from cellular respiration. It actually comes from cellular respiration. In other words, since carbon dioxide is a product of cellular respiration, but not needed in the production of ATP, this carbon dioxide then becomes a byproduct of cellular respiration. Okay, so magiging ko anhiya byproduct of cellular respiration is carbon dioxide. Okay, now one glucose molecule, we'll go back, one glucose molecule can produce 2 molecules of pyruvic acid. How many acetyl coenzyme A will then be made in one glucose molecule? Pira.
2.
Very good. Duha. Ha. Kaya anong kaduha? This pyruvic will become acetyl coenzyme A, and this pyruvic acid will also become acetyl coenzyme A. Now, how many carbon dioxide molecules will then be made
2.
in one molecule of glucose?
Duha.
Two molecules of carbon dioxide before it enters into the mitochondrion. Parang preparatory stage pa lang tayo. Preparatory stage of Krebs cycle. Okay, now. So, acetyl coenzyme A. The pyruvic acid is now converted into acetyl coenzyme A. And because of this conversion, it is now allowed to enter into the Krebs cycle. Okay? Okay. So we are now in the Krebs cycle. Okay. How many acetyl coenzyme A are made? How many acetyl coenzyme A's are made? Again, in one glucose molecule.
2.
Dalawa. Okay, now. How many times will it take one glucose molecule to enter into the Krebs cycle, or yes, to undergo reactions in the Krebs cycle? How many times?
2.
Ilang? Okay, very good. How many?
Twice.
How many?
2.
Twice.
2.
Once, twice, thrice.
Twice.
Twice. Very good. Twice. So every acetyl coenzyme A will undergo reactions in the Krebs cycle. Since there are 2 acetyl coenzyme A's produced in one molecule of glucose, it will take 2 turns of the Krebs cycle in order to produce all of this. Okay? It will take 2 turns of the Krebs cycle for it to produce 2 molecules of ATP and the other molecules. Anyway, so let's take first the Krebs cycle. Okay, acetyl coenzyme tayo. Okay. Pag sulod niya Krebs cycle, This acetyl coenzyme A will undergo series of chemical reactions. One of the products will be NADH, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide hydrogen. So it will be able to produce three NADH in one molecule of acetyl coenzyme A. Tikang inihiya diin, tikang ha, NAD, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. Okay, this nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide will undergo oxidation. It will undergo oxidation to produce NADH. Okay, now another compound will undergo oxidation, and that is ADP. ADP. So phosphate will join with ADP for it to become adenosine triphosphate. Here, only one ATP will be made. Another compound in the mitochondrion that will go reaction will be Fed. Fed, or what is Fed? F is not an F. I forgot. I forgot an F. Parang adinat ako. Ano kinunumdum. Anyway, Fed will undergo reaction to become FADH2. Okay, so hydrogen will combine with Fed to become NADH2. During the reaction of acetyl coenzyme A, electrons will be released. So here, hydrogen will become energized. Hydrogen here will accept electrons coming from the breakdown of acetyl coenzyme A, so it can join with NAD. Here, phosphate will accept electrons coming from acetyl coenzyme A for this to become ATP. Hydrogen will again accept electrons and will become energized for it to be connected with Fed to become FADH2. During the reactions, another carbon dioxide molecules will be made. This time, for every acetyl coenzyme A going or undergoing chemical reactions, it will be able to produce 2 molecules of carbon dioxide. Kanina, antes siya sumunod, 2 molecules of carbon dioxide were made. Ano? So, kada usa, 1 carbon dioxide. Kay duduha man ng acetyl coenzyme A, then 2 molecules of carbon dioxide were made before it entered into the Krebs cycle. Okay, now. So, the NADH, the ATP, and the FADH2 are all energy carriers. They are all energy carriers. Paano nangyari yon? Okay, now. Diba? Diba NAD? NAD hiya ano? Originally, NAD iton hiya. Hydrogen will become energized so that this can join with NAD. Meaning, ini nga hydrogen is the one that contains the energy. Okay? So, it contains or it carries the negative electron. Okay, so, kay energized man hiya, nakadugkot hiya, naka-join hiya NAD. So, may adahit dida. Okay, so may niya. Okay, so may niya adat iyat energy. And between the D, and the H. P was able to absorb the energy, and its absorption made this phosphate energized. Asa nga naka-join hiyahan ADP, meaning the energy is in between the P and the P, the last two phosphates. So here is the energy. Likewise, and FADH2, ini nga hydrogen was able to accept electrons, just like this. Now, because this becomes energized, it was able to join with FAD. So an energy is here. Okay, all of this, the the NADH rather, the ATP, and the FADH2 are all energy carrying compounds. They are all energy. Okay, NADH2, NADH, ATP, FADH2. Again, in one acetyl coenzyme A, only 3 NADH are made, only 1 ATP is made, and only 1 molecule of FADH2 is made. And again, as what I've said just a while ago, all of these are energy carriers. They are all energy carriers. Now, nasa ring ka mo, 2-acetyl coenzyme A will enter into the Krebs cycle. So it will take 2 turns of the Krebs cycle to produce 2 molecules of ATP. Wait lang ha. It will take 2 turns of acetyl coenzyme A to produce 2 molecules of ATP. It will take 2 acetyl coenzyme A to produce 4 molecules of carbon dioxide, 6 molecules of NADH, and 2 molecules of FADH. Of the 4 products in the Krebs cycle, carbon dioxide is not needed. It is not needed in cellular respiration because, since carbon dioxide is not needed in the process, it will go out of the cell as waste. Okay? Animal cells don't need carbon dioxide, so it will go out of the cell, will go out of the organism as waste. Okay, now, 1, 2, 3. All of these are energy carriers, right? But of the three, ATP, NADH, and FADH2, only 2 will proceed to the next step, which is electron transport chain. Okay? Again, 1, 2, and 3. ATP, NADH, and FADH2. Of the 3, inilahira nga duha, iton ma-proceed into the next step. What happens to ATP? So maram kita that carbon dioxide will go out of the cell. It will go out of the mitochondrion and out of the cell as waste. So what do you think will happen to the ATP? Hindi rin man yung ma-proceed into the electron transport chain. So what will happen to the ATP?
It will be used.
It will be used by
The mitochondria.
the mitochondria. You're on the right track. Sige pa. It will be used by what? Yes, it can be used by the mitochondrion during the process. Okay. Now, ATP is a ready-to-use energy carrier compound. So once an ATP is made, then the cell can use it at once when needed. Kung kailangan na ng cell ng energy, it can use ATP available. Okay? The very reason why it will not proceed to electron transport chain. Kasi hindi na siya kailangan dun. In fact, it is an electron transport chain that ATPs will again be made. So of the three again, only NADH and FADH2 will proceed to the next step, which is the last step in cellular respiration. Okay? Questions before we proceed to the next step? Feel free to ask. Feel free to ask. Okay? Okay na? So,
Yes, ma'am.
NADH and FADH2 will now proceed to the next step, which is electron transport chain. Okay, so we are now on ETC, which is an acronym for electron transport chain. Okay. Everybody please read, may I request Section Mango to read the first statement here. 1, 2, 3, go. Santol. Section Santol, 1, 2, 3, go. Waray na Section Santol. Ada pa kamo kung nangangaturog na. Hala, durungan
Alright,
pagbasa ha. 1, 2, 3, go. Stage consisting
consisting of a series of
electron transfer,
organic from organic
simultaneously releasing energy during the process.
NADH and
ATP
FADH
energy oxidized and
one
releasing
statement
energy.
lang po.
releasing energy.
One statement lang po. The first statement. So stage, ETC is a stage consisting of a series of electron transfer from organic compounds to oxygen while simultaneously releasing energy during the process. Now, may I then request Section Mango to read the next statement. Please unmute. 1, 2, 3, go.
NADH and FADH
are oxidized, thus releasing
energy
in the form of ATP.
Please make the necessary correction. Kanina nga yan, NAD converting or turning or becoming into NADH, it is not oxidation but reduction. Reduction. The release of electron and the gaining of oxygen. Adi naman hiya, oxidation. It gains oxygen and it releases oxygen and gains electrons. So NADH and FADH2 undergo oxidation process. So FADH and FADH2 are oxidized, thus releasing energy in the form of adenosine triphosphate. May I request again, Section Santol to read the third statement. 1, 2, 3, go.
Mechanism by which
Mechanism by which
ATP
Chemistry which ATP is formed in the ATP
phosphorylation.
Okay.
phosphorylation.
Mechanism by which ATP is formed in ETC is called chemi-osmotic phosphorylation. Chemi-osmotic phosphorylation. The last statement will be read by Section Mango. Please unmute. 1, 2, 3, go.
Occurs in the cytoplasm of bacteria,
Mitochondria.
Okay. Okay, so electron transport chain occurs in the cytoplasm of bacteria, but in case of eukaryotic cells, it occurs in the inner membrane of mitochondria. So, iba-iba't era location. Ano? In glycolysis, it happens where? Class, in glycolysis. Then hinanabo.
The
cytoplasm or in the cytosol or outside the mitochondria. Krebs cycle happens in
the mitochondria.
In the matrix of mitochondria.
Okay, very good. In the matrix of mitochondria. While electron transport chain takes place in the inner membrane of the mitochondria in the case of eukaryotic cells. We have it here. Sa labas ng mitochondria, o sa labas ng mitochondrion, glycolysis occurs. In the matrix, Krebs cycle occurs. And actually, here in the inner membrane, this is where ETC happens. Okay, so NADH and FADH2. Okay. NADH will break down, and electrons will be released. Okay. Now, when NADH breaks down, hydrogen will separate from NAD. So, NADH will then become NAD. Okay. So, it will then become an ion, okay, a NAD ion. So, hydrogen will then be pushed from the matrix to the inner membrane or to the space between membranes. Meaning, in between, balik kita ha. So from the matrix, hydrogen will be pushed towards the inner mitochondrial space. Dito. So from here, from the matrix, it will be pushed. The hydrogen that's separated from NAD will be moved or will be pushed toward the inner mitochondrial space. Likewise, FADH2 will also break down. During the breakdown, hydrogen will separate from FAD and two hydrogen molecules will go towards the opposite. It will go towards the opposite side. Diba? Ang mga hydrogen magkakaguwa na itong hiya. Magkakaguwa, mabulag na. Kaya diba kanina, hydrogen, sugad mo ito na, anay, mag-annotate tayo. Okay. And
ninin po sa lumpas di sa ulit pagatak didi.
Okay, mute ko lang na kay and I am okay. Now, when NADH when NADH breaks down hydrogen, no. Hala? Ano magiging tawag na anyway, so this line this line joining hydrogen will joining hydrogen with NAD, this will break, and as it breaks it will release energy, so it will release negatively charged electrons. Okay, so nag-release na yan energy. So pag-release na yan energy, this hydrogen will become unenergized. Kanina, energized siya as siya nga naka-join yan NAD. So nag-undergo yan oxidation. Pag undergo niyan oxidation, electrons will be released. The separated hydrogen will then be pushed from the matrix towards the mitochondrial space. Okay? Now, the same thing will happen with FADH2. So two hydrogen molecules will separate from FAD. So from FADH2, it will go back to its original compound, the FAD. So the hydrogen molecules will again be pushed from the matrix towards the mitochondrial space. Okay. When hydrogen molecules separate from their original compounds, or from the compounds, it will release electrons or negatively charged electrons. Okay, now, these negatively charged electrons will undergo, or it will be transported or will be transferred to a series or to a chain of proteins. So from this to this to this, okay, so it will what's this? It will be transferred from these proteins. So these are the proteins. Ito siya. These are the proteins where electrons are transported. So as the name implies, electron transport chain. So electrons coming from these compounds will be transported into a series of protein complex. This is a protein complex, another protein. And on the last protein will share electron to oxygen. Diba? May available na nga oxygen. So, the last protein will share electron to oxygen. In other words, oxygen in ETC is the last electron acceptor. Okay, now, oxygen here will become energized and will be joined with two hydrogen atoms for it to become water. Okay? In other words, water is one of the products of cellular respiration. Okay? So, sa electron muna tayo ha. So, anong nangyari? Ano ang fate? Ano ang magiging fate ng electrons dito? the electrons that were released from NADH and FADH2. So the electrons again will be transported into a series of proteins from this to this to this. So the last protein will share electrons to oxygen, making oxygen as the last electron acceptor. When oxygen accepts electron, it will then become energized and will combine with 2 hydrogen atoms to become water. That's what I have said. Water is one of the products of cellular respiration and is made in the last step or the last stage of cellular respiration in electron transport chain. So yun ang nangyayari yun ang nagiging fate ng electrons dito. So what will happen? Okay, now what happens with the hydrogen ions here? So what will happen to the hydrogen ions na nandito sa mitochondrial space? Okay, so these hydrogen ions will pass through a protein channel called this is a protein actually. ATP synthase. This is an enzyme actually. Enzyme is a protein. So the hydrogen ions will pass through this enzyme called ATP synthase. For every hydrogen ion that will pass through the ATP synthase, it will be able to energize phosphate and join with ADP to become adenosine triphosphate. Okay, so all hydrogens here will pass through ATP synthase for it to become ATP. Okay. Pag sulod kasi niya dinhi, pag agi niya dinhi, it will release electron that will be absorbed by phosphate. So the phosphate will accept the electron, the phosphate will become energized, will join with ADP to become adenosine triphosphate. And we call this process as chemiosmotic phosphorylation or chemiosmosis. Chemiosmotic phosphorylation. Diba? Anak kong term. Let me. Okay. As ba, chemiosmotic ba o chemiosmosis? Class. Chemiosmotic, chemiosmosis.
Chemiosmotic.
Okay, chemiosmotic phosphorylation. Okay, chemiosmotic phosphorylation. So, it is the process when hydrogen ions pass through the ATP synthase to release the energy and be absorbed by the phosphate, and the energized phosphate will join with ADP to become adenosine triphosphate. Now, in electron transport chain, in the case of eukaryotic cells, 32 ATPs are made. 32 ATPs are made. 32. How many ATPs are made in Krebs cycle?
1.
How many? 1. Another answer, another guess.
2.
2, very good. So 32 plus 2, that makes 34. How many ATPs are made in glycolysis?
Two.
Two, very good. So how many, or what is the total number of ATPs made in one glucose molecule?
6.
Dinhi kasi, ha-ETC 30. Let's talk about eukaryotic muna ha. In eukaryotic cells, in ETC, 32 molecules are made in one glucose molecule. 32 ha, 32. Ha-Krebs cycle, how many molecules of ATPs are made again?
38.
2. That makes 30.
4.
32 plus 2, that makes 34. How many glucose molecules are made in, how many glucose molecules are made in glycolysis?
2.
2, very
38.
good. So what is the total number of ATPs made in eukaryotic cells?
4.
34 plus 2 plus 2, how many?
38.
32 plus 2,
38.
32, 34, 36. So 32 din ya ETC. Plus 2 in glycolysis, that makes 34. Plus another 2 in plus 2 in the Krebs cycle, that makes 34. Plus another 2 in glycolysis, that makes 34 in all in eukaryotic cells. But in prokaryotic cells, 34 ATP molecules are made in ETC. 34, prokaryotic. Plus 2 in the Krebs cycle, pera na. 34 plus 2, pera na. 36, very good. Plus another 2 in glycolysis. What will then be the total number of ATP?
38.
38 in just a molecule of glucose. In just a molecule of glucose. Remember that cells are always working 24/7. They never stop working. In other words, as cells work, they need energy coming from ATP. Okay? So dapat na ATP will always be produced by the cell. Because if the cell runs out of ATP, then it will also run out of energy that it will not be able to do its normal work, its normal activities. Okay? Okay na? So, okay. We go to, let me, wait lang. Okay. What stage produces the most ATP? What stage produces the most ATP?
ETC.
Very good. Electron transport chain. Why? 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 Of the three, why does ATP produce the most ATP molecules? Aliana, do you have an idea? What could be the reason why electron transport chain produces the most number of ATP molecules? Because of Because of, it starts with letter O. Francesca. That's another guess. Francesca, another guess?
Oxygen.
Because of, very good. Because of oxygen. Who answered it? Was it you, Francesca? Okay. Oxygen. Oxygen is present in electron transport chain. And because of oxygen, it was able to produce many adenosine triphosphates. Okay? Okay. Now, it is again in ETC where water is made. Water is made because of the presence again of oxygen in electron transport chain. Okay, so we go to, okay, so 2 electrons, anyway. So we have here the 3 main steps of electron transport chain. Transfer of electrons from NADH and FADH2 to COQ. This is quinine. This is actually a protein. This one. Okay. So that is the first step. Next step, transfer of electrons from COQ to cytochrome C. So from this to this, so this is the second step. Next, transfer of electrons from cytochrome C to molecular oxygen. Okay, from this to form water. Okay. We'll now summarize the whole process of cellular respiration. In glycolysis, these are the products. 2 ATP molecules and 2 NADH. The ATP cannot be used by the cell at once, while NADH will proceed to to Krebs or ATC?
ATC.
ATC, good. Krebs cycle. It will produce 2 ATP molecules, 6 NADH, and 2 FADH2. Now, ATP can now be used by the cell, while the 6 NADH and the 2 FADH2 will proceed to ETC. Okay. In ETC, in electron transport chain, 32 ATPs will be made or are made. So 32 plus 2 plus 2. That makes 36 in all. Okay, 36 in all. In the case of prokaryotes, instead of 32, it is able to produce 34 molecules. Plus 2 in Krebs, plus 2 in glycolysis. That makes 38 molecules in prokaryotic cells. But in eukaryotic cells, only 36 ATP molecules are made. Okay, so aside from ATP molecules made in electron transport chain, 44 water molecules are also made in 1 molecule of glucose. Okay. Okay, so we go to the importance of electron transport chain. May I request section Mango to read the first statement? Unmute and then read. You read. 1, 2, 3, go.
The electron transport chain is defined
Vital
as
and
cellular
cellular
respiration.
respiration by
Okay, So the electron transport chain is the final and most important step of cellular respiration. Final in the sense that this is the last stage of electrons. This is the final stage of cellular respiration. Most important step of cellular respiration simply because this is where the most numbered the most ATPs are made. Section Santol, please read the next statement. 1, 2, 3, go.
While
Glycolysis
glycolysis
in the Krebs cycle make the necessary precursors
Precursors.
to the electron transport
Electron
chain.
transport chain
transport
is where a majority of the ATP is created.
Okay. While glycolysis and the Krebs cycle make necessary precursors, meaning sa meron precursor, iton kumbaga before kumbaga precursor nagtitikang hera iton pasimuno kumbaga the electron transport chain is where the majority of ATP is created. Everybody please read the third importance of electron transport chain. 1, 2, 3, go.
Has an
Important role in both
So electron transport chain. Okay, so electron transport chain has an important role in both photosynthesis and cellular respiration, which are very important processes in any living cell. Okay, photosynthesis in plant cells and other photosynthetic organisms, and cellular respiration in all living cells.
Okay.
So that's how important ATC is. Okay. Okay, questions? So that ends cellular respiration. Again, in glycolysis, it is a cellular respiration. It is a type of cellular respiration that doesn't need oxygen to make ATP. While Krebs cycle and electron transport chain are types or stages of cellular respiration that need or require oxygen to make ATP molecules. Okay. So in the chat box, you write 3 things you learned today. Timer starts now. Okay. Write 3 things you learned today in the chat box. And you send it. You send it Are you done? I'm actually reading your answers now.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So that ends our lecture today on cellular respiration. I hope you learned something. Okay.
Ma'am, excuse
So,
me.
yes.
Di ba permit may the documentation pag nagkukuan? Bangin ka kasi ningali mo tagpapa-remind la po ako.
Adi na, again, screenshot ko pala.
Sige
Please
po,
turn
ma'am.
on the camera. Please turn on the camera. Please turn on the camera. So we go. We are now on the first page. First page. So I can see Aliana, Alexi, John Antoinette Dator, Ruiz, Ninia, Raydel, Francesca, Mark, Antoinette Labado, Jade, the fourth, Erica, Debbie, Anna, Earl. So we have Justin, Kiana, Androlyn, Charnet, Mart, Hyacinth, Hannah, Krishna, and Denise. Ayla Anaya, please turn on the camera muna. Please turn on. Kiana, Andre, Luke, and Charnet. Please turn on the camera. 1, 2, 3. Ay, hala. May kinaka-unit camera. Wait lang. So 1, 2, 3, go. To the second page. The second page. Shira, Liana, Julia. So dalawang Julia, Apura, and Guevara. Allison, May, Jesslyn, Marian, Christian, Gail, Chad, Zoe, Jahara, Maxian, Alea, Francine, Isabella, Hazel, Giselle, Raven, Hans, San Emmanuel. Are you still there? Joseph, Zion, Isaiah, John Ray. Please turn on the camera. Please turn on the camera. Okay, thank you. What about you, Hans? John Ray. Okay, thank you. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we go to the third page. There is still a third page. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Go. So let's make it a day. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned something. Now, tomorrow, we will schedule the summative test covering the whole cellular respiration topic. Okay? So our test will be in Google Classroom again. Okay? So we'll start it at exactly 2 o'clock. Ano, 2:00. Okay lang? Or 2:30?
Okay po, ma'am.
Ate Karuyag, 2:00 or 2:30?
2:30.
2:30, ma'am.
30, ma'am.
2:30,
2:30.
2:30,
Google
ma'am.
Classroom ha. Google Classroom. Again, the coverage is cellular respiration, and that includes fermentation. Okay? Cellular respiration including fermentation. Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye, ma'am.
Goodbye.
Ma'am,
Bye,
bye, ma'am.
Ma'am.
Bye. Yes, ano?
Will there be an
Bye,
online class
ma'am.
alongside the summative test in the Google Classroom?
After the summative test, there will be no more discussion, but I will send to you the last topic, which is tools and equipments in biotech.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, I will download it after this class. Thank you.